And I think Sierra Leone should actually consider going into fish farming so that we'll not be having the shortage in the market, especially when our waters are filled with all sort of...
We're blessed with so much, but unfortunately we just do not know how to manage it. That's the major or biggest problem of Sierra Leone management.
And it's going to be again another way to actually diversify our economy.
Absolutely.
And agriculture, and especially fish farming. Now, the University of McKinney, UNIMAC, has commenced a training program for inmates at the McKinney Correctional Center. According to the university, some of the inmates are undergoing training on leadership and other skills, which are expected to help transform these inmates when they return to their communities. Now with us in the studio to discuss the initiative of the university is Leslie Cole Showers, who is the outreach officer, the Sierra Leone Correctional Services. Good morning, Leslie.
Good morning, and thank you for having me this morning.
Great to have you, Leslie.
Of course, shortly we're expecting the Executive Director of Sierra Leone's Legal Aid Board, Fatmata Claire Carlton Ansels. She heads an organization that is responsible to provide free legal aid services for the poor, including legal representation, advice, assistance, legal and community-based outreach, and alternative dispute resolution. So she is very integral in the conversation. But Leslie, first off, let's start. Prior to the introduction of this particular training program by the University of McKinney, when Sierra Leone was moving from the penal system from prisons to correctional center, what were the plans of the correctional services to ensure that those who are serving sentences in the correctional centers are transformed for proper reintegration into society?
As a lot of people already know, we transformed from prisons to corrections in the year 2014 through an act of parliament in September 2014 specifically. And that act of parliament gave us the mandate to serve as correctional service. You know, being a service means we render different services to the nation as well as to law offenders, because for the United Nations Development Program, any institution that transforms life, by extension, transforms the nation. And for us, we are very focused on that. Since our transformation process, we've been able to plug a lot of the requisite practices into the institution since we transformed from prisons to corrections. It's not been an easy journey, I must confess. We are only a 5-year-old child, I may say. So technically, we are still in the embryonic stage in terms of implementing all the requisite practices of correctional service. But so far, we've been able to make some gains. Before the implementation of this university education in one of our centers, which is the McKinney Correctional Center, we've been engaged in technical work for inmates. We've been engaged in entrepreneurship skills, and the technical skills was imparted on the inmates by the Government Technical Institute over the number of years since our transformation. And the entrepreneurship skills was handed over to the inmates by a local entity, Live by Design, you know. And they also trained some officers, because the officers will be leaving behind and inmates will be going outside. So the officers are in charge of handing down the knowledge that they gained from Live by Design, you know, when the training shall have been over, and some inmates would have left. New inmates that are coming in, the officers will be giving them the requisite knowledge. Those are some of the things we've been doing. And we've also been engaged in adult literacy classes, because for us, we discovered that most people who commit crimes, not just here, I've done some research even overseas, most people who commit crimes are not educated. They cannot read and write, you know.
So quickly, let's now go to the impact, the trainings you've mentioned. What has been the impact over the last 5 years? Because at the end of the day, we are going to get these people out of those centers back into the communities. And when they come into the communities, we've seen situations where they go back to those centers as a result of continuous committing of crimes in the communities. So after serving their terms in the prisons, the trainings they would have received from the institutions that go into training them, how are you ensuring that maybe a follow-up, or say you have a startup thing for them, so that when they come out of the centers, they will be able to implement and start a very better life, so they will not go back to the life they've been living?
Well, before I go into the things that we have readily made for them, I mean, made available by the United Nations Development Program and the International Bureau of Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, the U.S. Embassy, INL, let me tell you this, let me just make it an add-on. We also implemented what is known as the case management. That is psychosocial counseling for these inmates. And 30 graduate officers were trained by Life by Design, because they have the requisite expertise to train people in terms of psychosocial counseling. So they trained 30 graduate officers who were recruited in 2017, including I myself sitting here. I was also recruited in 2017. And those 30 graduate officers have been given the requisite psychological tools to be able to redeem these inmates from their offending ways, so that when they come out as rebranded individuals, so that society will be able to look up to them as change agents. So those are some of the things that we do nowadays. You know, it is commonplace for people to say, you know, people come out and go in again, but there's no statistics to prove that. So we challenge you, the media and the public, sometimes to come up with statistics.
Okay, so from the correctional center, what's the success rate?
Our success rate...
Back that with figures.
Our success rate is high. You know, I'm not here to mention names. We've had inmates who have come out to be very successful in life, having gone through tailoring training, having gone through the bakery training, having gone through entrepreneurship training, having gone through agricultural training, because as I speak now, we have an agricultural sector operating presently, but most of our work is done manually. We only use machines on few occasions when the need arises. As I speak, we have a center in beyond Magboka Town, Manfata Correctional Center, which is blessed with 557 acres of land, and the manager there, Chief Superintendent Senesi, JJ Senesi, has ensured that he plowed 60 acres of land. 40 acres of land were plowed for rice cultivation, and rice has been cultivated. And 10 acres were plowed for corn cultivation, and 10 acres were plowed for cassava cultivation.
Okay, so what is the success rate? I mean, if you've transformed from the prisons to now correctional service, what's the success rate? What impact can we say, or can you say, have been made so far? We need figures. You want to tell me that the correctional center does not have some sort of a database of figures or statistics as to those who are coming in and going out and the impacts they're having in the society?
Of course, we have figures. That is why now what we've implemented, another thing that we've deployed in some of our centers in the country, is the biometric registration process. It was deployed in January this year. Okay,
you're not getting my question. If correctional service has started since 2014 and have been doing all sorts of vocational skills training, adult literacy training, and a host of other stuff, you can't tell us the rate at which it has been quite successful.
I can't tell you that. So
can you give people the figures? We want to know.
Well, our figures, because we have the corporate office. I was just there this morning because that is his job, to check for the ratios and statistics that we have in terms of our success. I'll tell you that so far we've been able to succeed on a 75% basis in terms of inmates who come and go out of our centers since we transformed from prisons to corrections in the year 2014. That's why I told you, I'm not here to mention names. We've had inmates who have come out to be successful agriculturists. We've had inmates who have come out to be successful tailors.
So you say success rate is 75%?
Yes, so far.
So what happens to the 25%?
We are still working on it. Like I said earlier, we've just been able to plug in some of the requisite practices of corrections. We are still trying to bring on board all the other necessary practices into our institution.
So does the correctional service know the reason why 25% is not working?
It is because we are still a 5-year-old baby. That's why.
Because
that's why there's that relapse.
That's why.
Of course, I mean,
so there are no studies,
we've succeeded over 50%. I think we deserve an applause for that.
Good enough.
75%.
Good enough. But the 25% is still a big concern for Sierra Leoneans. So do you understand or know why 25% are relapsing or
that's
going
what I've
back
just explained.
into
We've not
prison.
been able to plug in all the requisite practices of corrections that befit offender management in this day and age. We're still trying to grasp, you know, some of those other practices. That is why
what are those
the United Nations Development Program is trying its best to ensure that it capacitates officers from time to time. I mean, over 30 officers have been to Colorado State, where they have, I mean, a correctional service to go and learn the ways of correctional practices. And we've also sent officers to Kenya and Nigeria over the period of these 5 years that we've transformed to go and learn some of the things that these countries are doing that is making them succeed, so that we also can succeed in Sierra Leone.
So what are the services that the, you know, correctional service wants to incorporate so that, you know, maybe by God's intervention we have like 100% success rate? Like
I mentioned earlier, one of those practices is the university education that has come into being now in the institution, and case management as well. It started, we are only piloting it. We've not been able to deploy it in all of our correctional centers in the country. It is being piloted in Freetown, Palemba Correctional Center, and the female correctional center situated in Brookfields, Willoughby Lane. We're still trying to grasp, you know, what it takes to redeem these inmates from their offending ways. It's a really difficult process. It's a very scientific process. I mean, sometime I started reading books about it and I just shut myself out because it involves a lot. It involves a lot of psychology, and we do not have any psychologists in our institution. We only have graduates in different fields. So I'm using this opportunity now to call on graduates in psychology to apply, because we'll soon be opening, I mean, our doors for applications. So I'm calling on, if you're a psychologist out there, I'm advising you to apply, to come and help us change the mindset of these people.
So let's talk now about the university training going on in in McKinney, for example. We have people who, or pupils who go to school, commit crimes. At the end of the day, they are behind bars, and so their education must not stop. Why was this initiative? Why was it? Or should I say, when did it when did it come up? Because if you take a look at the University of McKinney, it's a private institution, and we have government, the University of Sierra Leone. Where did we not get it right first to implement it at the headquarters as a pilot instead of McKinney and a private institution, UNIMAC?
Well, we do not control those kinds of things technically. This conversation started in the year 2012. By then, now Chief Superintendent of Corrections, Joseph Senesi, who is now the manager at Mafanta Correctional Center, he was the manager at the McKinney prisons by then, because as at 2012, we were still prisons. So he started the conversation with the University of McKinney, but the program did not come to fruition under his time as manager there. And over the years, manager after manager have gone there. They were not able to strike up an agreement with UNIMAC. So last year, October, the manager there now, who was a public relations officer of this institution as well, Mr. Saliu Suleiman Touye, struck up an agreement with them, and they came up with a memorandum of understanding and sent it to headquarters. Headquarters vetted it and okayed it. So it only came to fruition about 2 weeks ago, and we are really grateful to the University of McKinney for this initiative, because just like you said, we have government institutions, universities in this country. They've not been able to come to our aid. We've been engaging them, you know, on few occasions, but they've not been giving us the requisite reply that we needed. So a private university has come to our aid, and they are doing it, you know, on their own volition, on scholarship basis.
What are the courses being offered currently?
Well, they are offering courses in community development studies, agriculture, and entrepreneurship certificate courses. Each of them lasts for 6 months.
Okay, so when you say scholarship basis, it means it's not every inmate that will qualify for this program.
You mean at the Makeni Correctional Center?
Yes.
Yes, it's done on scholarship basis, and it is only deserving inmates that enter into the courses. We have 15 of them involved in all of those courses now, and all of them are deserving. They have 2 credits and some passes at their Ayv'S results.
What are the criteria
for
inmates to be qualified to get the scholarship?
Some of them have 2 credits, some of them have 3 credits at their Ayv'S result. And let me just inform you, we also have 2 HTC holders involved in these courses that they are rendering now. One is HTC primary and the other one is HTC secondary. So it's a big leap for us as an institution. When we posted it on social media, we received a lot of praise for that.
Leslie, let's go back maybe to statistics that Stella was asking. Excuse me, Stella was asking you about. Do we have figures on how many graduates are in our correctional centers? How many pupils are in our correctional centers? So at the end of the day, we'll be able to know the type of people you cater for in terms of courses like this.
Well, to be honest with you, we are still trying to gather the figures because we only thought of it recently. Now we have a very active corporate office. Since we transformed to correctional service, we've had the corporate office, but it has not been very active because the institution lacked the requisite knowledge and manpower. They only had few intelligent people by then, graduates. But now the institution has over 100 graduates. So all of those graduates are working together to bring up all of these statistics and necessary changes that you're asking me about now. The next time I'll be here, I'll show you that I'll give you all of those statistics from the corporate office.
Okay, let me just take a few messages. Sweezman says, in the correctional center, how many inmates do you have in one cell? And the training is going to serve all the inmates, or it's just a few inmates that will have the opportunity to learn skills? Kanu Abel says the University of Makeni, UNIMAC, is an institution being designed mainly to building a civilization of love. Today, the university has also deemed it fit to not only base their philosophy within the university, but also extend it to change the mindset of inmates at prison. With this, I will say kudos to the gallant administrators of UNIMAC. Thank you very much, sirs.
So I mean, the initiative is being applauded by many Sierra Leoneans because at the end of the day, it helps in rehabilitating those serving sentences in our correctional centers. But how do we get that cascaded to other centers? It's very important because Makeni is just it's just a small center. We have across the country, and we have the headquarters that is so overcrowded. So how do we get that here in Freetown, where we have over 2,000 people cramped in a center built for just 300
a few
people?
hundreds.
I'm wondering how you're able to get that figure right, over 2,000.
So how many do we have?
Yes, no, it's correct. We have over 2,000. So I'm only wondering how I was able to get it right. As at yesterday, because I haven't been furnished with the figures for today, let me just furnish you with the figures for yesterday, nationwide. We had 4,670 inmates, both male and female. The male category, we have 4,536. And for the female category, we had 134. So we have fewer women committing crimes as opposed to the men. For Pademba Road Maximum Correctional Center alone, as at yesterday, we had 2,058. And that center was constructed to house 324 inmates as at 1914. But it's something of a different story in this day and age. And like you said, we're trying our level best to ensure that we spill this initiative to other correctional centers. The Director General, who took up in March, has been doing his level best to raise the bar of professionalism in the institution. He's a very quiet man, but believes in action. Mr. Joseph Lamo, you may have met him at some point in your studios. He's been here before. including his deputy, Mr. Dennis Aman. They are working, you know, with sleepless nights to ensure that the necessary changes are brought on board. So we are going to engage other universities again and try to make them feel the importance of education for inmates, for people behind bars. Because if you go into history, we've had people who have come out of prisons by then to become presidents, the likes of Nelson Mandela. If you go into the Bible, for instance, we had Joseph coming out of the prison to serve as governor in Egypt. And the likes of Malcolm X, an American Islamic scholar, came out of prison after serving 20 years in prison to deliver some of the most moving and touching speeches the world has ever heard. So, I mean, when people serve their time behind bars, it is not for them to be punished. You know, under prisons, the criminal was punished. But under corrections, the crime is corrected. That's one of the differences.
Have we actually moved from that? Because, like you said, the penal system was all about punishment.
Punishment, and
now,
it was all about the criminal and not the crime.
And so now we are talking about correcting the wrongs that got those guys into the center.
Yes, of course.
But still, I mean, with the conditions they live in those centers, are we not still just punishing those people in the centers? Well,
like I said, like you know already, we are challenged with overcrowding. I mean, a cell that is meant for 7 people, we have 25 people sleeping in there. They will have to sleep by turns. Some people will have to sit, allow the other person to sleep. And after some time, wakes up the other person and he gets a chance, or she gets a chance to sleep as well. So it's a huge problem for us. But we are doing our level best to manage the situation. That's why since 2010, you haven't heard of any escape in any of our correctional centers, especially the maximum correctional center, because we have been able to up our security system and we have been able to step up our level of professionalism. That is why even now, when Mr. Joseph Lamboy took over as Director General, him and his deputy thought it fit to install CCTV cameras right across the Pademba Road Maximum Correctional Center just to flesh out the dynamic security in that place. And since then, we've had some level of sanity, we've had some level of seriousness on the part of officers, because Mr. Joseph Lamboy, the Director General, and his deputy can be anywhere in the world and watch firsthand on their phones or laptops what is happening within the Pademba Road Maximum Correctional Center, because the CCTV cameras use internet, Wi-Fi specifically.
You know? All right.
What is
so it's a novelty.
Well, it is, and what is interesting is I'm seeing people who attended the University of Makeni being very, very proud this morning, saying that's why and they're very proud. So I'm just assuming what would be those who attended Frabe College or another university.
I'm a product of Frabe College, and it's a shame for me. I feel really shy, because I thought, you know, they could have stepped up and, you know, and be the pioneers of this project.
The partnership would have been more cemented between the correctional services and the University of Sierra Leone, because both are government institutions, and they should be able to complement each other's strives in ensuring that accomplishments are made to help rehabilitate and reintegrate our guys into society.
Exactly.
All right.
So we won't get tired. We'll talk to them again afresh.
So what sort of certification would they be receiving at the end of the program?
It's just an ordinary certificate. It's not a diploma. It's not a degree or HND. It's just an ordinary certificate. It's a 6-month program. Each of the courses.
So when I mean what sort of certification, does it carry? Is it being awarded by University of Makeni, or is it going to be referenced there, the Sierra Leone Prisons Correctional, Sierra Leone's Correctional Service?
Honestly,
what would be the awarding, you know, in terms of the certification? How is it going to look
honestly, if we do that, we'll be defeating the purpose for which we're instituting this initiative. The University of Makeni has assured us that they will not indicate in the certificate of any of those inmates that were once
inmates
in incarceration when they were doing the course.
Okay. So avoid victimization,
stigma, and those kinds of things.
Few messages from our Facebook viewers. Mohammed F.S. Kamara saying, that's my university. I'm a proud student of that university.
I'm ashamed.
Others follow. Swissman, Leslie Cole, we understand that the correctional center should be relocated in somewhere in Sierra Leone. So tell us how far the construction has gone.
All right. Alex Kamara says, is the correctional centers currently providing any other training program for the inmates? Masere Mohammed says, what's the capacity of the correctional center you are about to construct?
And Swissman is saying, Leslie Cole, prisoners who are undergoing life sentences, are they going to benefit on this learning program?
To be honest, no, because they are condemned inmates. Let me start with that very one. They are condemned inmates. And that's one of the other challenges that we're facing. We have so many condemned inmates now, about 58 of them. It is unprecedented in this country to have that number of high condemned inmates. You know, condemned inmates are those who have committed murder or treason offenses. So they are very dangerous offenders. So it's a challenge for us. We're also challenged with overcrowding. And the question of relocation.
Yes.
We're working on it. This government has assured us, the Minister of Internal Affairs, Mr. Edward Soloku, has been to Russia to strike up an agreement in order for the Pademba Road Maximum Correctional Center to be relocated to Songo. But I will not go into the nuances of that now because it's too early for me to do that. But we are working on it with a lot of steam.
Okay. So now, of course, there is that 25 failure rate, you know, from the correctional service. So what sort of program do you now, you know, have for those people who go back into prison or go back into the correctional service?
You mean the programs that we have now, or the
yes,
programs that we intend to introduce?
Whether the ones you have now, the ones you intend to introduce, because you have 25% going back to prison. So what's the program or option for those people?
Well, I mentioned that earlier in my interview, but let me just reiterate. We have industries training for inmates. We have a whole tailoring workshop in Pademba Road Maximum Correctional Center, the Bo Correctional Center, the McKinney Correctional Center, the Kenema Correctional Center. Sort of to speak, we have them in our most popular centers because that is where we have a high number of inmates.
So if you're putting them back on the program they were in prior to leaving the prison and they are back, does that not raise a concern or show you that something is not working if you're putting them back on the same program?
Well, to be honest, few of them come back into our centers. Like I said earlier, that is one failure on our part and on the part of the media and research institutions as well. We've not been able to actually research those people who go in and come out, who go in and come out. It's a failure on our part, I admit it. It's also a failure on the part of research institutions and the media as well, because we just keep guessing. And that's not good for proper development.
So basically what you're saying is those people who go back into prison, there's nothing special to see what happened, where they went wrong, and how they can properly rehabilitate them. Because if they do go back once, very likely they will keep going back into prison.
Well, those kinds of people, the technical word we use for them is, we call them recidivists. That is those who come and go. Definitely, we're going to have those kinds of people who are going to remain. We won't be able to correct everybody. Let's just be honest here. We can't correct everybody. You know, even in advanced countries, they can't correct everybody. They keep coming and going. It's like a sickness for them. It's a sickness of the mind. That's why we've introduced case management, psychosocial counseling for these inmates. But like I said, we've not been able to spread it right across the country. We're piloting it in Freetown Male Correctional Center and the Female Correctional Center.
Okay. Leslie, I think a month or two back, I thought correctional centers in this country, because we were doing a project.
Okay.
And the reality in those centers is sad. Now, you have, for the East, for example, you can only make most of a very small structure to host inmates, the South. So what's the current plan of the administration to ensure that, irrespective of the fact that these guys are being incarcerated, they are still entitled to a dignified life?
I'm excited you came up with that you thought, because I was going to bring up that to challenge you. as an institution. It should form part of your corporate social responsibility to bring out the ills that we are facing as an institution, because we're a government institution. Because, mind you, anybody can be incarcerated. We've had politicians who have been incarcerated. Yeah. We've had, dignifying people in societies who have been incarcerated. So nobody is exempted from being incarcerated, as long as you go in conflict with the law and you go through the proper process, the police, the courts, and you find yourself in any of our centers. So I'm glad you did that tour, like you said. We've been engaging the government because we do not have monies to construct or expand. So we've been engaging the government, and the government has been doing its level best. But on the part of our donor partners like the United Nations Development Programme and International Bureau of Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, they've provided some funding for us to refurbish 2 blocks that were burnt down during the war at Mafanta Correctional Center. As I speak now, those blocks have been refurbished and they are ready to be used. And each of them can host 150 inmates. So we are speaking of 300 inmates here, additional space for offenders. But as I speak now, those blocks are unoccupied because we do not have the requisite manpower. That's why we are going to recruit just after the rainy season so that we can be able to commute some of those inmates to those refurbished blocks at Mafanta Correctional Center. And the same institutions that I spoke about, that is UNDP and the INL, have also helped us construct a pre-trial detention center at Waterloo, you know, and it has the capacity to host 100 male inmates and 10 female inmates. That's how far we've gone, and we are still waiting on the government to help us as well, because those are donor partners.
The issue of incarcerating juvenile in our centers is also very disturbing, and especially when we cannot ascertain whether or not these guys are juveniles. Because for McKinney, for example, we are at that center, and when we ask one of the people being incarcerated, one of the inmates, and how old are you? He was like 16. And the mother presented a birth certificate.
You mean in the McKinney Correctional Center?
In the McKinney Correctional Center.
Wow,
and the mother presented a birth certificate. And I'm sure the
the
prison officer who was in charge said, no, that guy, he looks like 20. So which one? That's
Mr. Toure. You met Mr. Toure there, Superintendent Toure.
So, no, not Mr. Toure. The officer that was in charge, Mr. Toure assigned somebody to take us around.
Okay, so you went to where the juveniles were kept, or what?
We went to visit the correctional center. And so we're not expecting a juvenile in the correctional center.
Okay, and you found him there?
Yes, according to him, he was 16. The mother presented a birth certificate of him being 16. And the prison officer said, no, he looks like 20. So it comes back to the facilities to be able to ascertain the age of those being sentenced or being incarcerated.
Honestly, we have zero tolerance for juvenile in our correctional centers because we have places for them. We have the Bow. We have one in Bow and we have one in Freetown where we place them, where the judiciary place them, because we do not place them. What I'll tell you is we are not in charge of handling juveniles. It is the Ministry of Social Welfare, Gender and Children's Affairs that is in charge of that. We only provide security for them. And for that issue that you brought up, it will be investigated by the administration. I can't say anything other than that.
But how do you prove the age? That's the question.
It's difficult to prove. Even you sitting there, you look like 20-year-old.
So that's what I'm saying now. What's the plan of the administration to be able to prove age of people? In order, because at the end of the day, if you don't have that facility, you keep incarcerating juveniles thinking that they are adults.
It's not our fault.
So whose fault it is?
I mean, those offenders come from the police. The police make the arrests, and the police charge the matter to court. And they must have asked the age of the child or ascertained the age of the child before charging the matter to court.
And they too do not have the required expertise to actually ascertain the age.
We can't. That's why I said it is the Ministry of Social Welfare that should be doing that.
I understand.
That should be insisting, no, this person should not come into this center. He should be taken to children's center or juvenile center.
Does the ministry too?
They do not have the requisite manpower to do that.
So that is where
there is a lot of challenge.
That is why we now have to welcome Fatmata Claire-Carlton, Executive Director of Legal Aid Board, Sierra Leone. Now, you've been very, very integral. You've been hands-on. You've been interfacing with these guys in and out of the centers. What's the reality?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to Ayv'S for the tour you have done, and also for our articulate officer here.
Thank you very much.
Really
I take it as a compliment.
Their best under the new management of Mr. Lamboy, and we are assiduously working with them. For children, what the courts normally do is age assessment. There's a process through which they go. But I can tell you that age assessment is not foolproof. We want that system to be further developed. And of course, that goes along with the lack of forensic lab. That goes along with the lack of DNA. Presently, we do DNA overseas, especially for institutions like the courts, like Legal Aid Board. So it is difficult, really, because you cannot tell you cannot tell a man's age by his face. And we, as Legal Aid Board, in fact, have the difficulty of at times challenging lawyers on the other side. That some of these children, some of these are not children, they are adults. Some of them are not adults, they are children. So, you know, especially our kind of pigmentation and the gene which some of us carry. So, and maybe the mother is correct that the child is 16. Maybe they went and made a forged document, certificate, birth certificate, that the child is 16. But I am also going to follow up with him, because we are actually helping the correctional centers around the country. And we will also check to make sure. And if that child is 16, we will definitely draw the attention of the judge. But having said that, the challenges to our House of Correction is a serious one.
All right, before we begin to jump into the challenges, which we know is a whole lot, it's right about 9 o'clock now, and we'll take a quick summary of the primetime news. But of course, at this point, we say thank you so much, Leslie Cole Showers, for joining us. Of course. Well, he is the Public Relations Officer for the Sierra Leone Correctional Service.
Actually, now the outreach manager.
Sorry, the outreach. Well, congratulations. Congratulations.
He's a manager.
I know. Congratulations on that. I'm sure we'll continue to engage you on this matter.
I look forward to that.
Yes, we will continue the conversation nonetheless, but we'll take a quick summary of the news and we'll be back.
Landslide at Regent Village leaves many homeless.
But it's already smooth like but they come. Then they see for long left now. Now we go to camp. We go to camp till they forget about it. But when they forget about it, so this rain away they camp, the court get for open back. You get for open here all crack. But then telling them now what this CSP don't crack now. What the game be they camp? Now I tell me woman me picking. I say look go up. I say yeah not safe. I say look go. So by the time go up now, camp. When me go up now, I can't check. I meet now all long court go.
Somebody go for go walk down there and they begin see the crack. It start like line. You see now the open start like line, they will try for like go watch the end no. They will say okay, we will communicate and from there. The next day we find out say this crack they expand more. No day we go see one for dinner. But who say for go? Night candle now. All. And as you see from eye candle, you know candle like a roll, a candle like way something they push candle, and how we push candle now so it left this part and the other side of just go before.
The government care for do for we. No again, no they go say we say we suffer small. Statement
from the perspective of Office of National Security, we have put together geologists, engineers, geohydrologists, and environmentalists. As I speak to you, they have started work already, and I believe they will be on this ground. They are going to do thorough investigation, the scientific investigation and recommendations that they will make for our attention. We inform government for the next key step.
The Ministry of Youth Affairs launches the Youth Policy Review process.
Because we need to update the current 2014 Revived National Youth Policy and the corresponding Youth Act. But let me be clear, the process we are launching today is not just about producing another youth policy document. This review process must produce a set of documents that the Sierra Leonean youth will say they have written themselves. It should produce another outcome that young people can relate with, and one that will directly meet the needs of our 21st century.
And analysis global systems, ideologies, policies, and practice, as well as the localized realities of our nations and community, including the ways this influence our ability to deliver on youth-centric policy and planning.
When we signed the contract, the first thing we said was a review of this nature should not, by necessity, be done by just one person. One of the things that I've learned in all the work that I've done at the United Nations and elsewhere is the need to not just talk about inclusiveness, but to demonstrate inclusiveness. And the Minister of Youth Affairs agreed with our proposal to first constitute an expert advisory panel.
President Bill bans ministers, deputies, and other public officials from overseas travel.
I have not put a stop to it. Let's get there. There's a temporary suspension of all non-essential, non-statutory travel, right? I mean, this is in fulfillment of his campaign commitment. Remember, during the campaign, we trumpeted the fact that the country was losing substantial amounts of money to frivolous overseas travels. So this policy, this directive, will ensure that we live to that commitment to bring sanity to overseas travel. Remember, we had profiled solutions that for some of these non-essential travel, you have various diplomatic missions abroad, people by competent Sierra Leoneans. Those ones could represent the country at such meetings, right? So this will help save much needed resources that can be plowed back into pro-poor development projects.
This move came at a time when many Sierra Leoneans, especially political opponents, are saying the president is actually flying in and out of the country as and when he pleases. What does this speak to that effect?
Well, I mean, I'll only say to those political opponents to read relevant portions of the New Direction Manifesto. He was presidential candidate there when he very vigorous. So it is not at the say of anybody. This is a very well thought through policy even before he came to governance, and he simply wants to implement them.
AfriCell's unbeatable data bundle. Now introducing AfriCell's unbeatable data bundles. To enjoy the unbeatable data bundles from the fastest and most reliable data network in Sierra Leone,
AfriCell.
Dial *113# and get up to 150% more data. Stay unbeatable. Stay with AfriCell.
I'm unbeatable. AfriCell. Nawi Network. There's a beautiful day headed your way. Keep your head up, you'll be okay. A beautiful day.
Do you find it frustrating going to the bank or the ATM? Having to wait in long queues, the prospect of being unable to get cash from the ATM, and the problems with internet connectivity for internet banking? Guarantee Trust Bank is introducing GT SimPay, the revolutionary new way to bank. With a thin SIM overlay, you can check your bank balance, deposit and withdraw cash, transfer money, issue e-checks, pay bills and recharge your phone credit anywhere, anytime on your current mobile phone, and you do not need access to the internet. All you need to do is visit the nearest GT Bank branch to register, get your SIM overlay and activate. With the new GT SimPay service from Guarantee Trust Bank, you needn't worry about the inconveniences of banking. Give it a try, register, get your SIM overlay and activate. GT SimPay, simple, reliable, secure. GT Bank, wouldn't you rather bank with us?
There's a beautiful day